It's crazy how fast this video sneaks up on me every single year. Each time I go to write about my favorite gaming experiences, it feels like I just made the same video in the last few weeks. I guess it's true what they say, the older you get, the faster time goes. I entered my 30s this year, and I saw my gaming time take a big hit for a multitude of reasons, all good things in my book, leading to a more balanced lifestyle, so I'm happy for that. Of course, you can't beat the classics, and gaming will always be my #1 hobby. Despite having less time to play this year, I still managed to spend significant time with 27 different games. I didn't beat them all, but I spent a good amount of time with them, and you can see those scrolling on the screen now. And you'll notice only 13 of them came out this year. I just didn't have the time to play everything I wanted to, so games like Helldivers 2, Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong, Dragon Age Veilguard, The Plucky Squire, and most recently, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, all went to the wayside. At the same time, I broke one of my external hard drives this year, causing me to lose all my footage for about half of these games, which is depressing, because that footage would really be nice right now. I mean, that severely hindered my Star Wars Outlaws video, but all I could do is move forward, and that's what I continue to do. As a result though, I don't have footage for every game I played this year, but luckily, the 7 that I really want to highlight today all managed to avoid destruction, except for one. But before we get to the 7 best games I played this year, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a few moments to appreciate the other games I played from this year and years gone by, because there were some real gems in there. And just like rubies, sapphires, and emeralds, they all shined, but in different ways. And with all this gem talk, how could I not start by briefly mentioning my time with Pokemon Crystal? Growing up, I had a save file with over 200 hours on this game, and after being away from Johto for over a decade, I really wanted to go back. So I bought this handheld emulator and got to work playing Crystal version. I don't have any way to record footage off of this bad boy, but right now my team is Mantine, Magneton, Sudowoodo, Feraligatr, Venonat, and Hypno, and we're headed for the 8th gym badge. And once I get to Kanto, I will be securing a Houndoom. What can I say? Just a great time revisiting this classic game from my childhood. And the same goes for Spyro the Dragon and Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, 2 titles I got to experience again this year. It's always nice to go back and play some of the games that you grew up with, those memories that last a lifetime. Of course, I also got to play some older games for the first time this year. One of my favorite videos to make this year was this one, my 6 bite-sized reviews of Game Pass games back in February. Truth be told, the video did not do very well, but it was such a fun project. Unfortunately, all my footage for those games was lost in the great external hard drive dropping of 2024, but the memories live on. In it, I challenged myself to write 1-page reviews for 6 different games, and my favorite of those had to be A Short Hike. What a pleasant little game that was. And then of course there were some new titles that I played this year that, while I enjoyed them, only merit an honorable mention here. Those include The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, Persona 3 Reload, and Little Kitty Big City. But for now, let's move on to my top games of the year. These numbered entries are the titles that stood out to me the most and will probably stick with me for quite some time. Much like last year, these are games that came out this year, but I do have one big exception to include because it was easily one of the best gaming experiences I had all year. But we'll get to that. So without further ado, I present to you the 7 best games that I played in 2024. First up, at number 7, we have everyone's favorite poker roguelike, Balatro. Let me be blunt, I've spent more time at the casino this year than in any other year of my lifetime, and I can't help but to think it's because Balatro planted a subconscious seed in my mind, tapping into my love of gambling games. And to be clear, I don't regret it. Balatro presents itself as this unassuming little card game where you build poker hands using all the cards and trying to score as much as you can using a series of points and multipliers. Anyone with basic knowledge of poker can pick up and play immediately, understanding that full houses beat a pair of threes, which beats a high card, and so on and so forth. You play a few rounds, pushing yourself to achieve the best score possible before eventually crapping out. But much like actual poker, the thrill of the game gets its claws into you quickly, as even without the ability to bluff, check, and call, you'll find yourself queuing up for another go, determined to beat that snickering joker. And it's on these subsequent runs where your brain starts to operate in a much more analytical way, coming to understand how the game's many variables influence your score. From planet cards that boost the point total of a certain hand, to the addition of more cards to your playing deck, to deck types that each contain different cards, and much more. It'll be up to you to decipher what it all means. And it's this learning process that's just as enjoyable as playing the cards themselves. Each error in your play might end up costing you a run, and it's this factor that lends the game a significant amount of strategical depth. But nothing captures the sheer amount of variation better than the game's Joker system. After each round of cards, the player is presented a shop, and it usually contains some way to get a Joker card, whether it's randomly bought or found in a pack. Each Joker offers up a new way to play, whether it incentivizes you to play straights or flushes, red or black cards, even numbers or odd numbers, rewarding you for adding or subtracting cards from your deck, taking your multipliers to the extreme, and so much more. It reminds me so heavily of finding a new item in the Binding of Isaac. You just never know what you're going to get and how it may affect the run you're currently on, because these jokers all work together. There's no way to know how things will play out unless you try out a new joker for yourself, learning its intricacies and how it either synchronizes or desynchronizes with the other jokers that you're already holding. And there are a large number of these jokers in the game, and you only unlock more as you continue to play and win. And with so many factors going into each playthrough, it ensures that no run will ever be the same. And that's a great way to structure a roguelike, as the excitement of something new always keeps players coming back, rolling the dice to see if they can finally hit that god tier run where everything just comes together. Balatro is an amazing game for that, and it's one that I continuously found myself going back to throughout this year. Out of all the games on my list, this is the one that surprises me the most, but yes, I have to include Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Perhaps its recency bias paired up with being a relative newcomer to the franchise, but I was stunned by how much I found myself enjoying this offering. Now, to be clear, I only played the campaign, so this discussion doesn't include multiplayer, but as I said in my recent review, what wowed me most was how it continuously surprised me by transforming its gameplay from mission to mission. Of course, you have your linear hallway shooter sections and levels, and they impress with their ferocity both in the visual feedback and also the audio. At the core of any great shooter experience is a well-struck balance between power and danger, and Black Ops 6 strikes it well. Regardless of what weapons you choose to use, you're going to feel capable of taking on any foe, whether they be a regular soldier or a beefed up variant. However, you aren't invincible, and ducking and cover is often required. This back and forth is needed for a Call of Duty campaign, and Black Ops 6 delivers. However, as I just mentioned, it's everything else surrounding this strong core gunplay identity that allows the game to rise above the competition. The developers had no qualms about shaking things up as much as possible from mission to mission, whether that meant emphasizing a different tactical playstyle, giving you non-violent approaches, shaking up the level design by offering something like a mini open world, incorporating espionage and sabotage directly into the gameplay, offering up a puzzle for you to solve, even having a platforming section, or just shaking up the player's expectations by altering the mood and atmosphere of a whole level, of a whole mission. It's crazy. It's so many things that changes every time you start a new mission. And I can't understate just how much these other elements stuck out to me alongside of the joyous but expected sounds and sights of clips being unloaded. When I think about my time with the game, sure, the shooter sections were fun and action-packed, but it's those other bold departures that stand out. Like stumbling through an abandoned underground research lab while under the effects of a hallucinogenic drug, forcing me to do combat with zombies, demon creatures, and perhaps most horrifying, mannequins. Or how about being dropped off in an open world desert area and being set free to complete as many or as few optional objectives as I wanted to? Or how about just walking around the home base trying to solve a multi-layer puzzle without the need for a single firearm or ammo cache? There's a confidence in design that permeates throughout the campaign and is best symbolized by the sheer variety of gameplay scenarios that the player finds themselves in. And you know what? Despite not being familiar with the story's background from previous games, it was still easy to follow along with and enjoyable at times. Nothing too special, but it certainly did enough to inform the gameplay scenarios while offering up a globe-trotting adventure to boot. It's been a few weeks now since I finished the campaign, and now that I've had time to let it settle, I can safely say it's the best first-person shooter experience that I've ever had, at least in solo offline play, and that makes it worthy of a spot on this list. Alright, time for my yearly guilty pleasure inclusion on the list, but yeah, how could I not include Dragon Ball Sparking Zero? Despite having a lot of criticisms towards this game, chiefly the lack of proper tutorials and an unwillingness to teach the player, amongst other things from the community such as a lack of content in general, well, besides all these problems, I can't help but to smile every time I think about this game. If you watched my review, you know that I have a weird history with the Dragon Ball series. I never watched the anime at all, but instead experienced the story firsthand through playing Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 2 as a kid. Despite the leap from TV to video game, the charming characters, personalities, designs, and moves all caused me to develop a love for the franchise all the same. It's been well over a decade since I played Tenkaichi 2 and 3, and I had been looking forward to Sparking Zero all year for a chance to reconnect. While it does remain inferior to its predecessors in a multitude of ways, I can't help but to cherish the time I spent with this title, and it's clear the team had a great time making the game as well. An incredible amount of detail has been pumped into the experience, from the stylized menus, to the wonderfully adapted character designs and poses, to the particle effects emanating from every powerful Kamehameha and Final Flash, and so much more. Fights truly remain the star of the show, and are always a spectacle to behold, whether you're playing in story mode, online, or custom battles. Speaking of which, this mode, Custom Battles, is perhaps the most ingenious inclusion of the entire package. Within Custom Mode, players can handcraft battles, situations, dialogue, scenery, and more to fully create any fan-made scenario that they can think of. If there's been a Dragon Ball story of your own creation just floating around in your mind for years, Sparking Zero offers you the opportunity to bring it to life, not only for yourself, but for many others to experience as well. It's an amazing tool to put right in the community's hands, and has gone severely underrated in my opinion. Custom battles are amazing. But that's not all. The story mode also includes some interesting what-if scenarios that branch away from the original tale. And while not every single one is a home run, they provide intrigue more often than not. But truly, it's the fighting itself that stands out the most. There's a giant roster of characters to play as, with more on the way, and that's awesome. I mean, what can I say? One of my favorite things about Sparking Zero was literally just going to the roster, picking out new fighters that I hadn't used yet, and just trying out all their movesets to feast my eyes on what the developers had created and how they brought these characters to life. Seeing how much work the developers put into making these super and ultimate moves shine is perhaps what I got the most personal enjoyment out of. And sometimes, nostalgia alone is enough to propel a game onto a list like this. It's an acknowledgement that, yes, this new iteration does have problems, but it's something I'm willing to overlook because it reminded me of days gone by. It brought me back to those afternoon and nighttime gaming sessions of my childhood and teen years, affording me moments of appreciation for this medium and this hobby that has gone a long way in shaping my life. And I think anytime a game allows you to happily reflect on that past, it's worth acknowledging as something special. So, good job, Sparking Zero, you earned a spot on my list. Back in 2020, Final Fantasy Remake just barely made its way onto my top 10 games of the year list. Literally, it was the 10th entry. Flash forward 4 years now, and I can safely say that Final Fantasy Rebirth ranks much higher, and for good reason. Rebirth feels like an evolution of Remake, taking the best portions of that game and building on it while taking a different approach to storytelling. The plot-heavy focus of that first game is still present, but it's de-emphasized in favor of character studies, giving us a greater understanding of who Barrett, Tifa, Cloud, Red 13, Cait Sith, Yuffie, Aerith, and even Sephiroth really are. We learn about them in scenes of happiness and despair, often balanced masterfully to give us a full portrait of a character's background, explaining the events that shape them into the people that they have become. While the overarching plot points have somewhat faded in the months since I played it, it's the character moments that endure. Learning of Barrett's tragic backstory, seeing the rise, fall, and eventual rise of Cait Sith, and even just spending a day at the beach with the party. It's these moments, amongst many others, that stand out to me. Evidence of the game's commitment to developing its characters, ensuring that by the time the finale rolls around, not only in this game but also the next, that we are fully invested into these characters. It's different from Remake, but in a much better way, at least in my opinion. And going hand in hand with character expansion is world expansion. Literally, this game is massive. It has a series of open world hub sections for the player to explore to their heart's content. I imagine many fans of the original game will be in awe, seeing how the iconic locations of the 1997 classic have been reimagined here using modern tech. The geographical landscapes are varied and also stunning both up close and from a distance. And if the open world content manages to overcome its repetitive nature and sink its claws into you, well, say goodbye to a massive amount of your time because there is simply so much to do. Probably the most content in any game I played this year. There's a staggering amount to do, and perhaps most memorable to me was Queen's Blood, a super strategic board game that had me hooked, and accompanying it was a long and fleshed out questline of its own. Just a fantastic little mini-game. And then there's the combat that took the already excellent ATB system from Remake and expanded on it, returning our powerhouses Aerith, Red 13, Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa, along with an expansive skill tree to flesh them out how you see fit. But it's the new additions that struck me the most. Yuffie, and of course, my favorite character in the game, and possibly my favorite character from any game this year, Cait Sith. Their additions to the party are dispersed throughout the story, allowing for an injection of freshness just as you begin to fully grasp the previous party members. Combat is just super satisfying to play through, a brilliant blending of pre-planning and party building, fun and frantic action, and a bit of strategy too as you navigate damage, heals, and other items. I played the game for 70 hours, and I don't recall ever getting tired of combat. It's just that strong. There were a few nitpick moments, but overall, really fun. So yeah, Rebirth is a massive and fantastic package that delivers a grand adventure chock full of things to do, places to see, and people to meet. I highly recommend checking it out. Alright, we're getting into my top 3 games of the year now, and just like the Game Awards, this one may be a bit controversial, but I can't not include Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. I played through the expansion twice before making my video review, and it was an eye-opening experience, reminding me just how subjective difficulty can be in games. My first experience with it felt very frustrating when it came to some of the bosses, but that was also informed by my own character's playstyle, and a second run allowed me to come around on some fights while also noticing some other problems. So to be clear, I don't think Erdtree is perfect, and I stand by what I said in my video, but it's still not hard to recognize that this is perhaps the best DLC offering in video game history. I mean, truly, what rivals it? The only thing that comes to mind for me is The Witcher 3's Blood and Wine expansion, which was also incredible. But Erdtree is right there with it, if not beyond it. And the biggest reason I love this expansion was its world design and the exploration within it. Elden Ring's base map was massively wide, but not very deep. To me, From Software world design is at its best when it overlaps on itself over and over, a la Dark Souls. Erdtree feels like the closest world we've gotten to that since that 2011 classic. I mean, sure, there are large open stretches of land, but around every cliff face or hidden within any cave is an opportunity to move vertically. This includes deep dives downward into an eerie hidden forest and a tucked away tomb, but also scaling a giant mountain where a fight with an enormous impaled dragon awaits you. And there isn't anything besides sheer curiosity and will that makes you discover these locations. No easy, straightforward paths. No, the terrain works against you like a boss at the end of a dungeon. In this way, exploration feels so much more rewarding because it's you uncovering the past for yourself, despite geography's best attempt to thwart you. It's extremely satisfying to traverse this world, and you're constantly being rewarded with new areas to uncover as a result. By far, this was my favorite part of Erdtree, just uncovering this jumbled world full of twists and turns, and of course, those gorgeous views. But what's a Souls game discussion without mentioning the bosses? Look, I do think From Software's continued pushes to up the difficulty from game to game is starting to reach the fairness threshold. I said as much in my review, and I stand by it, but I have come around on some of the boss fights found in the DLC in the months since release. Particularly, Midra, R'Lana, and Mesmer stand out as fun, challenging, and mostly fair fights that push me to the edge. These are fights that make me wish I could challenge them again without having to commit to a brand new save file, and I think that's what stops me from moving this DLC any further up the list. It isn't standalone, and to reach it, you're gonna have to start a brand new journey. And while there's nothing wrong with more Elden Ring, the time commitment surely is a factor. Still, FromSoft needs to be celebrated for the quality of this gargantuan expansion of their base game. My favorite part about Elden Ring was the exploration, and Shadow of the Erdtree takes it to a whole new level. Alright, well, we're getting close to the end now, and earlier I mentioned that there would be one game on this list that didn't come out this year, and we finally reached it. The runner-up for the best gaming experience that I had in 2024 goes to Baldur's Gate 3. And for anyone who watched this video from last year, the 2023 video, I can safely say that yes, had I played Baldur's Gate 3 last year, it would have been my game of the year. Sorry, Tears of the Kingdom, move over, because Baldur's Gate 3 is incredible. Unfortunately, it's another game that all my footage was lost, so I can't really share my full experience. I'm just going to share some clips from my review, but I'm still going to talk about it. And you know what? Losing all my footage and not being able to show you everything, perhaps that's poetic, because every player's journey through Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be completely different anyway, whether it's earth-shattering events that affect the overall plot, or within character interactions and fates. Truly, I have never played a game that emphasizes choice and consequence so vehemently, seeming to contain endless outcomes regardless of what the player chooses to do. It really puts Telltale games of yesteryear to shame, as here, it truly feels like your decisions, actions, and words directly influence how the story plays out and the perspective that characters have towards you. It seems like every character has long, meaty quest lines for you to follow, and some of them even overlap, forcing you into tough choices. It's a staggering accomplishment and offers a treasure trove of replayability. While that dramatic emphasis on choice and consequence is what lingers most in my mind, I also have a great appreciation for how welcoming it was to me as a complete newcomer to RPGs of this style. The character creator has a ton of options, but it made things simple to follow and understand, and this same praise goes towards combat as well. It encourages experimentation without ever overwhelming, despite the sheer number of factors that play a role in any fight. I was by no means an expert at it, but despite not having a ton of super in-depth tutorials, I was still able to grasp everything I needed to not only beat the game, but also to enjoy the strategic layers of fights. And I also have to shout out this game for its world building because it's truly stunning. It's out of this world. It rivals some of the best I've ever seen in video games. I mean, I get that much of the framework has been outlined by decades of Dungeons & Dragons in the past, but the pure implementation of it here in such a cohesive way is amazing. The game has so many different factions, races, and classes that all play a role in defining the world. Not to mention, the game just isn't afraid to get weird sometimes by including things like a talking cow that's actually an alien blob in disguise, or a coin creature just randomly lurking in a gated bridge in the Shadowlands. Truly, the game throws everything at the wall and gets it to stick without losing narrative or tonal consistency. It feels like an instance where every time the development team was up to bat, they hit a home run on each swing. Baldur's Gate 3 is just a series of consistently stacked wins while almost never missing. Had I played this last year, yes, like I said, easily it would have been my game of the year, and I even could have put it at number 1 on this list if I wanted to, but a perfect storm came together, and instead, it clinched the top spot. Well, that brings me to my game of the year, and you know, it's a weird situation. Truthfully, I have not finished this game at the time of writing, but I can't deny that it has been my favorite gaming experience in 2024. So, this year, my game of the year is Metaphor ReFantazio, the latest spin-off from Atlas. This title reminds me so heavily of my first time playing Persona 5, a game that cemented itself in my top games of all time list, and that alone carries a lot of weight. Of course, it could never take Persona 5's spot as my first time experiencing this sort of game, but still, Metaphor adds on so much, and it truly elevates the entire package. To no one's surprise, Metaphor ReFantazio heavily borrows from the structure of the Persona series. You know, long dungeon sections with turn-based combat that's balanced out with social links and opportunities to bond with your party members and other NPCs from across the world. I'll go more in depth in my upcoming review, but it's the way that Metaphor takes these familiar systems and evolves them that leads to it being such a special experience. For example, combat still incorporates elements from the Persona system, the turn-based moves, the one more system, and elemental weaknesses, but makes it something wholly unique owed to its emphasis on archetypes instead of personas. You know how in Persona games, the main character is most special because they're the only one who can swap freely between different personas? Well, here, every single party member can do that, and it opens up a gargantuan number of synergy plays and opportunities to experiment. It is staggering and allows for overpowered team builds as much as weird builds, and that level of freedom is always appreciated. I'm summarizing it quickly here, but it feels like Persona 6 will be a lesser game if it doesn't follow suit. There are so many options in combat, and it's incredible. And the same level of innovation has been brought to other areas of the game as well, like leveling up social links and social stats. It's never been easier. Rarely have I ever been unable to advance a character's questline because of my stats. No, plenty of opportunities to advance them both are available and tie in greatly to the game's overall journey. And when I say journey, I mean a literal journey. You are traveling in this giant walking ship across the entire world while hanging out with your bros. Like, it's incredible. And unlike the Persona series, Metaphor Refantasio is a political drama that focuses on a fantasy nation attempting to replace their fallen king, leaning upon a democratic system for the first time. Your job is to win the throne, but it's not motivated by personal desires, but instead by a united mindset and goal shared amongst your allies. That's vague, but I'm trying to remain as spoiler-free as possible here. It's safe to say though, I'm 50 hours in, and the story has continuously gripped me and kept me wanting to advance it forward. And I think a big reason for that is that beyond the interesting overarching plot, you have a plethora of fleshed out characters with motivations, backstories, and personalities that mingle in some cases and clash in others. These character dynamics enrich the overall tale, and getting to know them along your travels has been just as rewarding as getting to know your classmates in the Persona series. It's wonderful. And I always love stepping foot into a brand new fantasy world, and the one found in Metaphor does not disappoint. It isn't afraid to not only touch on controversial and touchy subjects, but instead to incorporate them directly into the main story and the world building. The game tackles issues of racism, class structure, religion, political corruption, child loss, child abuse, and more. And each of these subjects is handled maturely and professionally, highlighting their emotional weight and societal impacts without wallowing in it. Instead, they're counteracted by positivity, support, and a willingness to press forward from our party members. I think it's all great stuff, and I can't wait to see how the game concludes and to talk more about it in depth in my upcoming review. For now, this is all I can say. Every time I pick up and play, I feel like I'm always making meaningful progression, whether it's in defeating a new enemy, unlocking and fleshing out a new archetype, advancing the political drama, learning more about a dear companion, or exploring a brand new landscape. And it's great. Every time I play, I lose track of time, and perhaps that's the greatest proponent of why I adore this game so much: the immersion. I am completely engrossed in it, and I can't deny it. So congratulations, Atlas. Metaphor Refantasio is the best game I played in 2024. Thanks for watching. Alright y'all, that's a wrap for the channel here in 2024. I'm really looking forward to 2025, as I expect it to be as heavy-hitting a year as 2023 and 2020, with titles like Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yotai, Grand Theft Auto 6, Avowed, Outer Worlds 2, and Elden Ring Night Reign leading the charge for some of my most anticipated. It should be another great year. I also wanted to take a moment to thank anyone who spent time watching my videos in 2024. Especially my subscribers. It's been another year where the channel's numbers have jumped exponentially, which always makes me feel good. But it's beyond that. It's mostly the continued number of comments that roll in. It's always nice to know that people are enjoying the content and that it's bringing people some entertainment. And I also appreciate the ones that leave great feedback for me to consider. At the end of the day, all my videos are just opinion pieces that some will agree with and others won't. I love when people take the time to respectfully share their own experiences and thoughts, as it gives me a chance to reflect on my own perspectives. Truly, one of the most enriching mindsets you can have in this life is understanding that other people's opinions will differ from yours, and that's a thing to be celebrated, not tarnished. So, yeah, in short, I love hearing from you all, so be sure to keep leaving comments. I reply to as many as I can. And with that, I think we're about done here. Thank you so much for your continued support, and I look forward to bringing you more videos in 2025. I'd love to make content on the new releases I just mentioned, but I also want to return to Spyro's world and follow up on my Spyro the Dragon video with a look at Ripto's Rage. And who knows what else I'll get into. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, and as always, have a nice day, and take care. Oh, shoot. Wait, I totally forgot. There is one other game that I started playing in 2024.